this episode, we discuss the most recent space news, including NASA's Psyche asteroid probe's successful launch using Falcon Heavy, SpaceX's defense of the Starlink constellation in light of a recent FAA report, and SpinLaunch's acquisition of a wealthy new partner. The Psyche asteroid survey mission from NASA finally launched on a Falcon Heavy rocket from Pad 39A on a drizzly Friday morning. The $2 billion probe had to wait more than a year for the start of its journey to a metal-rich body in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, more than 2 billion miles away. But the launch on October 13th went off without a hitch. The asteroid it will be studying, 16 Psyche, inspired the Psyche name. The largest known metal-rich asteroid in the system, 16 Psyche, was found in 1852, and there are only 9 others that we are aware of. Scientists aren't even sure of the composition of this large metal object, which is 173 miles by 144 miles in size and roughly potato-shaped. Because it orbits so far away from Earth, scientists can only detect it as a tiny pinprick of light. They are aware that it contains significant amounts of metal, but they are unsure of its exact composition, which may also include rock, sulfur, or anything else. The Psyche probe was designed to shed light on this mystery. Hall-effect electric thrusters will be used to gradually but steadily accelerate the 6.0-pound probe halfway to its destination before decelerating, which will take 6 years. The ionization of the fuel's atoms using this system's highly effective reaction is powered by the probe's 2 5-panel solar wings. The Psyche probe will use 2 multispectral cameras, 2 magnetometers, and both a gamma-ray and neutron mass spectrometer to examine the asteroid's chemical makeup up close once it is in orbit around it. Additionally, it has a radio experiment that aims to gauge the asteroid's gravitational field. That's a lot of gear, especially for a mission that had been postponed for such a long time. The Discovery program, which created the Pathfinder and InSight Mars lander missions, had selected 16 Psyche as a mission target back in 2017, originally aiming for a 2023 launch. The date was shifted to 2022 to match a more effective trajectory, but COVID showed up and messed everything up, forcing the Jet Propulsion Laboratory to push the launch date back to 2023 once more. A lack of staffing was primarily to blame, according to an independent investigation into JPL and the delays to Psyche. COVID had been preventing people from entering the lab for the majority of 2020 and 2021, so there's no surprise there. Then, as they were getting ready for a launch on October 5th, the team discovered a problem with the engine, forcing them to postpone the launch for another week, until Psyche was finally scheduled to launch on October 13th with a Falcon Heavy. This kind of effort, expense, and scope of the mission also give us a hint that Psyche may be a little more significant than it initially appears to be. That's because 16 Psyche offers a rare chance to see what the interior of our own planet might resemble. This size of asteroid is a relatively uncommon one for metal-rich bodies. Again, there are only 9 known in the entire system as of now, and NASA scientists think there are 2 potential origins. One of them, 16 Psyche, was the molten core of a protoplanet that was smashed out of its planet during the formation of our solar system. Or it could be a piece of metal that hasn't completely melted down that was originally part of the material that was drifting around our star when everything was forming. In either case, we have a good opportunity to observe our planet's core, including its structure, magnetic field, gravity, and perhaps even how it formed. Additionally, it doesn't hurt that the Psyche probe will assist NASA in assessing the robustness of the deep space laser communications grid, which we are currently developing and will be crucial for our operations around Mars and elsewhere in the next few decades. The mining of this asteroid is unfortunately not a possibility, although the value of 16 Psyche as metal puts it somewhere in the $10 quintillion range. That is only a rough estimate that makes for interesting video titles and headlines. The fact is that we lack the technology to safely approach 16 Psyche close enough for mining to be practical, and the quantity of metal it contains would essentially render it worthless due to market saturation. We'll just have to remember it if we ever require raw materials for manufacturing in space once we have that technology. For the time being, the real value of this asteroid lies in what it can teach us about Earth and other planets, including Mars. Such studies are beneficial for a variety of fields, such as asteroid defense and material sciences. Similar to how the OSIRIS-REx mission recently returned a capsule containing regolith from the much more common asteroid Bennu, while the primary vehicle continued to investigate the potentially dangerous asteroid Apophis. In that case, the samples that were returned could assist us in developing strategies for dealing with the type of objects, should they ever be predicted to strike Earth, as well as learn how more organic materials came to make up Earth's composition in the first place. Sometimes, simply having a curiosity about something is sufficient. After all, there are many things about our universe that we still don't know. Okay, everybody, Before we delve further into the subject at hand, allow me to share a travel tale and the part language played in it. Thank you so much to Babbel for supporting this video as well as for taking part in this journey. On a recent trip to Spain, I came to understand the value of learning the language, even just the fundamentals. A report on the dangers of low Earth orbit satellite constellation re-entry was published by the Federal Aviation Administration on October 5th. And in an uncommon move, SpaceX has already retaliated. Back in 2020, Congress ordered the FAA to appoint an impartial body to produce a report on the potential dangers of all these new satellite constellations emerging, of which SpaceX's Starlink was and is still the most notable. However, SpaceX claims that the report's authors, a company called the Aerospace Corp, used dated information and guesswork. The report says that by 2035, we should expect to see one person injured or killed every 2 years as a result of debris from deorbiting constellation. First off, this part of the report is not the problem because reports like these are almost always based on assumptions made using the statistics that are available. In response to a request for risk calculations based on data currently available, Aerospace Corp determined that, on average, the space industry hasn't quite achieved the required 90% success rate for the removal of debris after a mission, which primarily includes debris from launching rockets. Aerospace Corp is correct in their assessment that the math indicates a significant risk from just SpaceX alone, let alone other constellations like Amazon's Project Kuiper. Given that SpaceX has permission to expand their Starlink constellation to 12 satellites and wants to continue growing to over 40 low Earth orbit units. But this is where the SpaceX counterargument makes some excellent points. First off, according to SpaceX principal engineer David Goldstein, who authored the company's response, the original analysis assumes that SpaceX has the same after-mission disposal rates as the rest of the industry when, in reality, it is one of the industry leaders, performing at a 99% disposal success rate post-missions, largely because of the reusability of company vehicles like the Falcon 9. However, as Goldstein points out, the second and most crucial point is that SpaceX built their Starlink units to completely fail. It means that because of how delicate their structure and parts are, nothing can withstand the intense heat of the re-entry process. And this has been demonstrated by the fact that, despite the reported deorbiting of over 350 Starlink satellites, no debris-related news has surfaced. It is at this point that the report really falters. The analysis conducted by the Aerospace Corp relies on a 23-year-old NASA study about the debris survival rates of vintage Iridium communication satellites, which is so disconnected from how contemporary satellites are constructed that this data could not accurately predict hazardous statistics for any current constellation. This does not imply that Aerospace Corp is solely to blame for this. Yes, they did use inaccurate data, and they neglected to contact firms like SpaceX to request updated models for re-entry, something that SpaceX would have probably done given that Aerospace Corp was then working for the FAA and SpaceX was likely to comply. The FAA's acceptance and publication of the report is the real problem. Government organizations frequently lack resources and personnel, but the FAA is responsible for handling this on a daily basis. They released a report that assumed there are over 54 licensed Starlink satellites, rather than the approximate 500 that are currently in operation. They also neglected to consider constellations from other governments, such as China's upcoming Guang network, and recent changes to FCC filings. We make jokes about Amazon not being any competition, but we're not a regulatory body. The report itself also appears to have focused on the expansion of the SpaceX system, ignoring other constellations like Amazon's Project Kuiper. The fact that this report is actually required is the main problem with it. Despite their stellar track record, SpaceX occasionally loses track of a fairing or experiences an uncontrolled rocket re-entry. Furthermore, they are not the only ones operating at the moment. Think about how the space race will be in 2035. This report is a waste of resources, but regulations must be made. The FAA will need to find a more reliable organization and start over. SpinLaunch, a startup in space technology and creator of the first kinetic orbital launch system, announced earlier this month that they had partnered with the Sumitomo Corporation of Japan. The Japanese investment company has agreed to take on more than just its typical investment-type role. They also want to represent SpinLaunch and all of its hardware inside the borders of Japan. However, the stated objective is to promote sustainable space technology. Some of you may recall that SpinLaunch has essentially created an extremely powerful catapult that launches a payload into the upper atmosphere at a speed of over 4,700 miles per hour using a massive centrifuge enclosed in a vacuum-sealed chamber. The vehicle starts its engines and completes orbiting once it has ascended to a height of roughly 60 kilometers. The conventional first-stage booster, which is the component of a rocket that can easily carry the most weight, is no longer necessary with this technique. The SpinLaunch system has some limitations, though. Given that the final, full-size model requires a vacuum chamber with a 300 feet diameter, logistics alone present a significant challenge. Additionally, given the winding up of the centrifuge arm's speed, any potential malfunction could be disastrous. But that is nothing new in the field of rocketry, of course. After its smaller-scale tests in 2021, it appears that Sumitomo was impressed with SpinLaunch. This smaller accelerator had a diameter of 108 feet and launched a test projectile up to a height of 9.1 kilometers. It was a truly outstanding engineering display. SpinLaunch has developed a rather original method of launching payloads into orbit, and it's wonderful that they have enlisted the support of a sizable investor to see them through to the end. It will be amazing to see the full-sized version. For more information on the aerospace industry and interstellar exploration, check back here every week. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button today. It will help us out a lot. For more videos like this, follow the Cosmic Era on YouTube. Every week, we publish one news update and one long-form essay. And if you'd like more, we currently have 2 more for you on the screen.